Hello. This is the review for Buyer Behavior Marketing 352 exam 1, chapters 1 through 4. And of course, I'm doing this because it looks like I'm being held hostage, and this is my hope to be freed. So here we go. I will just walk through the review guide and just talk a little bit about each point, and of course some of the real fine detail you're going to have to connect to yourself. We know that marketing is creating, communicating, and delivering a message of value, but how is that related to the holistic marketing concept? The holistic marketing concept is this theory that we connect the strategic function of marketing with the other functional areas, IT, HR, finance, accounting, management, in looking at the consumer first to determine what their wants and needs are, and then building our business model around that strategically so we have some synergies. And in doing so, understanding consumer behavior is relatively important if we are going to take the approach of the holistic marketing concept. We know that consumer behavior, from a general definition point, is the value-seeking activities, and that's key, is the value-seeking activities that individuals go about to realize or fulfill their realized and unrealized wants and needs. Consumer behavior, of course, leans on many other disciplines to do its work. It's science and art, and so we use marketing, of course, but also anthropology, sociology, psychology, neuroscience to help understand the consumer better. Marketing strategy is absolutely related to consumer behavior. In fact, it's required that we understand consumer behavior, how people buy, why they buy, where they buy, when they want to buy, because it is, from the tactical level, important to have the proper strategy. So our tactics are the result of our strategy, and our tactics are the result of also our understanding of consumer behavior. There are many vocabulary words that we went over on Chapter 1 that I'm not going to address here, but you should have a general knowledge of those, and better yet, use those in your explanations of the exam questions. We know that we can study consumer behavior in a number of different ways. Through research, secondary research, someone else's research. We can find in trade journals, in academic journals, from the census to Nielsen ratings. And then also we can do our own research, primary research, quantitative and qualitative, one not being better than the other. But we certainly can do that as well, both internally, or we can have someone else do it for us, like an ad agency. Some of the trends affecting consumer behavior that you should be aware of are the internationalization of economies, where we have to take into account the different cultures, that the world is becoming flatter, the technology and how we understand consumer behavior, and how consumer behavior uses technology and communicates is changing, along with the shift in demographics in the United States, and the unpredictability in the less stable economy certainly is affecting the way, or is a trend that we should recognize in the understanding of consumer behavior. Chapter 2. What do we know about decisions? We know that decisions are daily. I can't find my face here. There I am. Weird. We know that decisions occur daily. We know that some decisions are deep and wide, that require a lot of information and thought, and others happen almost instantaneously. We know that we use structure in our decision, and our decisions can be basically clumped into three categories. Those three categories are cognitive, habitual, and affective. Cognitive is deliberate, rational, and sequential. Habitual is behavioral, almost unconscious and automatic, and affective is, of course, the feeling and instantaneous gratification that we get. It's required that we understand what type of decisions are being made relative to our product or service, because our marketing tactics then would need to align so we have congruency, the alignment, the equality of the message, the encoded message, so it's decoded properly. We know that in order to make efficient decisions, these decisions are typically, our decisions typically rely on scaffolding, or what we call heuristics, shortcuts, rules of thumb, to help us in our decision making. Of course, that's related to marketing behavioral strategy, in that we want to make sure that we have heuristics in place, or we leverage those heuristics in our messaging relative to the decision that's being made. We also know that there's that heuristics is part of this constructive processing. In other words, we need to process information when it comes in. So we decode that information after we sense it. We organize it, processing, and then we do something with that after the organization. And the organization part, to be efficient, we use, again, heuristics. There are really three types of involvement that is part of our decision-making process. Actually, if we look at our involvement and the perceived relevance of the object, it's actually a function of a person, the situation, and the object relative to the product, the message, and the situation. And so we have to be careful that we understand the difference in that relative to habitual decision-making and the cognitive emotional. In fact, we looked at the Revised Personal Involvement Inventory, the RPII, and it helped give a scale to determine what is more or less important in the decision-making process in terms of our involvement, and then that, of course, would affect the strategy that we would use relative to that. Chapter 3. Internal factors that influence consumer behavior. We know that when we look at the influencing factors relative to consumer behavior, that there are things that are a part of us, which is our personality, and understanding that certainly is important to the study of consumer behavior, but more importantly, it's this recognition that individual personalities that align, that are similar, that are then combined together are our culture, in which we think, feel, and act. So this the actual meaning of culture is to inhabit, to till, or to cultivate. And if we look at the social anthropology, again, it's this think, feel, and act. So if we look at our culture, or at least our consumer culture, that consumer culture is really our personality, which is our commonly held beliefs, which defines us, and is, you could argue, a benchmark, even a heuristic that we use to ensure that whatever our consumption is, that it is socially gratifying. So it helps define our consumer action, our consumer culture does, and it gives meaning really to objects and activities and communication. If we look at the CSV, Core Societal Values by Hofstede theory, it is a way in which he used an instrument to define different cultures, mostly by country, based on a number of different markers or categories of individualism, masculinity, power distance, uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgence versus restraint. And of course, if we know that these are tendencies of our culture that is part of our personality, that defines meaning. We would want to, in a given culture, find out which ones of those they score high on, and then send messages encoded to the culture, in that case, to drive home a better result. We know that enculturation and acculturation are the ways in which consumers learn their culture. Most of our culture, or much of our culture, is enculturated, and that's how we grow up. It is the strong ethno and egocentric pole that we have. It is more predominantly male than female that learn their culture through enculturation. But in subcultures, and especially now as our country becomes more diverse, we tend to identify less with the ethnic identification, and especially the millennials are more acculturated into others and adapting and accepting their generally held beliefs, which of course is important in our messaging. There also is two other things that we should recognize in terms of our culture, is that through, you could argue, smart creative marketing, but also maybe through some gray areas, we can engineer reality in our messages, especially in our media, in our culture, our media culture, to create a culture that really doesn't exist, but we believe it exists in our episodic memory, and then we acculturate into it through our consumption. We also have to recognize that there are changes that are occurring demographically in the United States that absolutely is changing our consumption behavior due to the different increases in subcultures through the Hispanic population and the Asian population specifically. There was an article that was referred to on the review sheet, and it is in Moodle. I can't remember if we discussed it in class or not, but I won't refer to that in the exam. And then finally, Chapter 4 is on the social well-being, and do we need to take that into consideration as a brand? And the answer is, of course, yes, at least the way that we see it here at the Dull School of Business. And we need to be very careful in how we look at the manipulation of wants or needs to wants in this, what we talked about, ethical exchange. An ethical exchange is one that occurs when there is a close to equality of value. An unethical exchange would be when the brand is benefiting at the expense of the market through manipulation of the science and the art that we could do to get someone to buy our stuff, given the abundance principle. And we don't want to do it that way. We want to be a source of information, of good, valuable information where people can make informed decisions and hopefully pick our products because we believe they believe that it has more value. There are a number of different regulatory agencies you should be familiar with, especially those acronyms that we went through, and what their general purpose is to police bad behavior, knowing that the tendency is for us to drift into areas of gray, and we recognize that, and so therefore we regulate the market. Of course, if we over-regulate the market, then that actually, you could argue, is also harming the consumer. And then finally, we ended the discussion with this social corporate responsibility, or corporate social responsibility, and what is the role of a corporation to be socially responsible through the maybe, if you believe in the triple bottom line of the people, planet, and profit, and how does that look in the value exchange relative to consumer behavior. As you know, the exam will follow much of these bullets, if not directly, for sure indirectly in some shape, form, or manner. And I'm available through email if you want or have any other additional questions.